the life principles. You know these 5 principles that I'm about to present as the principles of ethics, and you already know these principles. You learn these, we all learn them as kids, from our parents, from our teachers, from our mentors, but in the course of becoming busy, successful professionals, sometimes we put these aside or we forget about them. So what I'd like to do is review these basic principles, say a little bit about where they came from, and then show how these principles point us in the right direction. So we'll take a look at this quiz again at the very end. So the most fundamental ethical principle of all is do no harm. Now, when we hear the phrase do no harm, to what social group does it generally apply? To doctors, to physicians, to healthcare providers. But wouldn't you agree that it's not just physicians and hospital social workers and dentists and pharmacists who have a responsibility to do no harm, but all of us? What would our society be like if people disregarded this principle and didn't have to pay any consequences for doing so? What would the world be like? It'd be pretty much like the world we have today. This is the foundation for society, for civilization. It's the condition for the possibility of any kind of community. But ethics sometimes demands more of us than simply not harming people, not being nasty to people, not hurting people. Ethics actually asks us, invites us to go further and to make things better. And here is where ethics splits off from the law, right? Because you can get into legal hot water as well as ethical problems by intentionally harming people. But are you legally required to make things better? Nope. If at the end of your life you look back and nothing that you did was really devoted to helping others, making the world a better place, have you broken any law? No. But have you really lived the fullest, richest life possible? Most cultures, most societies, most ethical frameworks say this is an ethical responsibility, even if it's not a legal responsibility. Life principle number 3 says that we ought to show respect for other people. Well, that sounds great, but what does it mean? In practical terms, it means at least 3 things. First, we show respect for people by keeping confidential things confidential, keeping private things private. And we saw how that was implicated in the restaurant scenario, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We show respect for others by telling the truth. Well, does the ethical responsibility to be truthful mean that we have to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If we're giving testimony in a court of law, yes. But outside of courts of law, isn't the challenge in life to be truthful, but not to the point of hurting people and violating life principle number 1? And that's the challenge raised by the cookie example. To be truthful, but not to the point of hurting someone's feelings. And we'll show how to get around that or how to honor both principles in a second. And we also show respect for others by keeping our promises, by doing what we say we're going to do. Life principle number 4 says that we ought to treat one another fairly. Well, that sounds great. Who's against justice or fairness? But what does it mean in practical terms? 3 things. First, how you distribute scarce resources, whether you're in a management position, a leadership position, or just in terms of getting through your day, how you distribute scarce resources says a lot about how fair you are. And what's the scarcest resource you have right now in your life? The most precious commodity you have is your money, right? It's your time. We've all had time management seminars, right? If you don't manage your time, someone else will. And it's presented as a management issue, and it is, but fundamentally it's an ethical one. Because if you give some people so much of your time that you can't give other people your time or give time to yourself, it's not fair, it's not ethical. We also show fairness in our everyday life by how we punish people. And we believe, at least in this culture, that the punishment should fit the crime. And we also show fairness or justice by how or whether we're even committed to turning an unjust situation into a just one. The 5th and final life principle tells us that we ought to treat one another with loving kindness.